Just change. All right, welcome to our first episode of Chop Talk. We're recording, we are live. We're so excited to be here with you. I am JB here with my co-host Jeremiah James. Man, we made it. We're here. We're in episode 1. How are we feeling about it today?
We're feeling good. You know, this has been a long time coming. We've been literally talking about this for years, and now we've been doing some test runs for a couple weeks here, JB, and we made it. So here we are, live from a hotel room somewhere in the United States.
Yeah, the timing of it just puts you into a hotel room. So but we're glad that you're here. Let's just go ahead and dive right into it. You know, for Chop Nation here as to what we're doing, why we started this podcast. As everybody can see, it's obviously called Chop Talk. We're going to get into that. You can see from our hats, our fan hood, and how that kind of connects. I got old Doe Campbell standing there behind me. The nature of our podcast is, obviously covering major, current events that are happening in sports world from wherever, college and professional is most of what we would dive around. Obviously putting a lot of emphasis into recent Florida State Seminole news and Chiefs news, as if you couldn't tell. But our podcast is a little unique because not only will we be covering that kind of stuff, but in the midst of the normal sports conversation, we'll be bringing forth some spiritual and biblical concepts and how it relates to sports and the things that are going on in the sports world. And we'll touch on that here at the very end, some things that have been going on within the professional sports world and how it relates to biblical concepts of it. Obviously, you and I are very strong in our faith, and we'll talk about that here in just a minute. But that's the nature of this podcast, and this is what we're going to keep doing each and every week. And we're going to have guests on here to interview from the high school, professional, and college level, and coaches or players, and how their walk with the Lord has impacted their success within the sport realm. So that is the nature of Chop Talk. We're really excited to start this podcast and to see where the Lord brings it each and every week. And so, yeah, man, so I'm just excited to just dive in. But let's take a second, this first episode, to just kind of share a little bit about ourselves and how we got to this place, man. Go for it. Shoot.
Well, thanks, JB. I appreciate it. First, I want to talk a little bit about my Chiefs background. People always like, well, if you're going to talk about the Chiefs, why do you love them? Or a lot of people say, are you fair weather? Did you get involved in 2018, right? When the Mahomes era started and we started with the Super Bowls. And I have to tell everybody out in Chiefs Kingdom, no, that is not the case. I actually, the story is I came out of my mother with a Chiefs pennant in hand, which I assume had to be a little painful for my poor mother. My first game was when I was 2 years old. It was a snowy day in Arrowhead, and we're talking 1980, stagflation, Jimmy Carter era. I was there in 1980. Not to age me, but I mean, listen, if this is a video, not just a podcast, so everybody can see this beard, this wonderfully seasoned gray beard.
That's right. Very well groomed.
I was there in 98 when Schottenheimer, Derek Thomas, and the boys dismantled Ryan Lee for the Chargers. That was a very huge game because they had, back in 98, they were supposed to be the team to beat. And basically, shortly thereafter, he left the NFL. I was there in 2018 in Arrowhead playing the Jacksonville. I think it was week 5 when the Mahomes era got started. It was a freezing cold day. It was rainy. We had jeans on, which was a bad idea. I should have wore shorts because it was super cold, chilled to the bone. Finally, the sun came out after halftime and everybody warmed up. But we'll never forget that with my mom, dad, wife. My aunts were there. Everybody had their Chiefs gear on. So it was just quite a memory we made.
Experience. Yeah, absolutely.
And in terms of foresight, I was actually there with my wife in October 2022 in Raymond James. And I know we'll probably talk about the Bucks. It's a big team of yours.
Just a little bit.
You guys had run us ragged in the Super Bowl the year before.
Poor
Mahomes ran for 500 yards.
Oh my gosh, just scrambling.
Defense.
The
defense. Anyway, as everybody knows, we lost that game. But I had the foresight. I'm like, I don't think Brady's going to play much longer. We have to go watch them go head to head. And so we drove down from Central Florida, went down, stayed the night before, went to Raymond James, and we're there. for the 41-31 beatdown of the Tampa Bay Bucks. I'm sorry for all the Bucks fans out there, including JB. But it was nice to be able to see that, get some of that vindication for that Super Bowl loss the year before. And it was on Sunday Night Football, so it was even better.
Even better.
And then I'm also a member of the Arrowhead West group. There's a couple hundred of us that get together, especially for the playoffs and the Super Bowl here in Central Florida. It's just a huge group of Chiefs fans that just come together, which is pretty amazing. We got a chance to watch 2 of the 3 Super Bowls with that group. So, and in terms of my sports background, personally, I actually grew up in the Midwest and was born into a naturally gifted sports family. On both sides of my family, we have both national and state championships in multiple sports. For example, my aunt holds the high school track record, her and her teammates that were set in the 70s, actually, and it still holds today. No one's still beat that record in their time, which is crazy,
wow.
right?
Yeah, that's pretty impressive.
My brother, I know, right? My brother actually holds the javelin record at our high school, which he set 20 plus years ago. That's never been set. It's there partly because in the state, in Kansas, where I grew up for 20 plus years, they took javelin out as a sport, from what I heard. So no one can ever beat his record going forward because they don't have it anymore.
That's one way to keep it.
Right. You can keep. It's easy to keep your record that way, right? If they take the sport out completely. And then I've got 3 cousins, all who are brothers, who have won 6 state championships between the 3 of them, and a JUCO championship as well. Personally, I started varsity football as a tight end my junior and senior year, 8-man football. We could probably have some more conversation about that versus 11-man. It's
8-man football.
It's unique.
Yeah.
And then I started varsity basketball as well. In college, I was asked to play 8-team intramurals my whole college career. In my 20s and 30s, I was party to 7 championship teams spread over multiple sports. In my 40s, I started coaching, as you know, and have been doing doing so ever since. And about 6 years ago, our pastor, as you know, asked me to start the Church's Sports Ministry program, which I did. And in the 3 years that I ran the ministry, we won 2 championship trophies with our co-ed softball team and second place for the men's team. On top of being the AD for that ministry, I coached the men's team, and I also played first base as well as a big 6'3" lefty. That's who you want to have at first base.
That's right.
My boy JB. And that's actually how you and I got connected, because JB now oversees the sports activities for the fields on Thursday nights, and I know you'll talk about that. We're also brothers in Christ at the same church, so I advocated heavily on your behalf to take over when my tenure was over. And I got to say, JB, you've done a tremendous job, and I know you don't have to go into your background, but I would love for you to share with ChopNation as to what's going on and what you're doing as the athletic director for our sports ministry. And that, in a long and short, is kind of the sum of who I am.
Awesome, man. Well, again, it has been a pleasure to go through this journey with you for so many years now. We'll talk about how just to kind of touch on that. I've been running a softball ministry now for close to a decade. Starting in the northern area of Apopka, and now we're in Central Florida. And what is now our church, but it was previously named a different name, and you guys were looking for a sports ministry, and so you came and were a part of what we were growing and doing there, and that's what it is. It's an actual ministry. We get the opportunity to go play softball on Thursdays, but it is a ministry first format that we have, and we have actually add a ministry dynamic to it. And so now, starting with 3 teams who've just been very obedient to the Lord, and now we average 20 plus teams, from about 12 to 13 churches from all over Central Florida, every spring and every fall. And it's just been amazing to just kind of see how, as our church has grown, that our own ministry our sports ministry within the church has grown as well. Mm-hmm. And so we have, basketball and pickleball and a lot of other sports now with just the growth of our church. Mm-hmm. So even in softball, just with the growth of that and just acting obedient, we had we got to bring a portable baptism tank out to our fields last season. So in November of 2023, and we baptized 6 softball members. We're literally right there out on the field. And so, as you had told me that that's what was going to happen, I don't know if I would have believed you at the time,
Right.
but yeah, that's just a little bit about the sports ministry in general. But just to kind of touch a little bit on myself, I have no inspiration for having been a Florida State fan. I have just grown up. I had things from when I was like 6 or 7 years old, where I was. So that would have been somewhere in the early '90s. When the Charlie Ward era was going on,
Yep.
and so but it wasn't like I had other members of my family that were Florida State fans and just kind
Right.
of followed in their footsteps. I just fell right into it and have literally been a diehard Florida State fan ever since. Life has always been Florida State or bust for me for college. Obviously, I've been a fireman now for going on 17 years, but just before that, had a very crazy decision to make, becoming a firefighter or going to Florida State, and obviously felt the Lord was leading me to that, and it's been the best decision I've ever made. But obviously, that was where I was headed, was Florida State, and so my mother used to always say, that I've been bouncing a ball since I was 2. And so sports has always kind of been my thing for my whole entire life. Florida State has always been my thing for my whole entire life. Eat, breathe, and sleep it. Don't miss a game. Move vacations around the football schedule. We actually, my wedding anniversary is October 5th, and of 2013 is when we got married. And so when we were sitting there choosing a date, it kind of surprised my wife, because my wife's like, talking to some of her girlfriends, it's like, I don't know if that date's going to really work,
Right.
Florida State plays Clemson, and she's like, and her friends are like looking at her like she's crazy, and she's like, wait, you're planning this stuff around like football games and stuff? And she's like, well, it kind of help or whatever, and they're looking at her like she's crazy, but like even vacations and things like that, it's like, do you think that we could go and stay this place for the weekend? Just can't, babe. Like, we're playing Notre Dame that weekend. Just can't do it.
It's a big game.
So, but I've evolved over the years of being married and having children. Fortunately, now we're at an age where you can just, pause the game if you got to go chase the kids down or something like that, come back to it. And so I still don't miss, but a couple minutes of the game, but at least have an opportunity to kind of catch up to it. But yeah, so our honeymoon was actually during a bye week. So we got married, and we played NC State, and we blew them out. This was the Jameis Winston era, so we blew them out, and so the game was at noon, and so I'm literally taking wedding photos with like my phone in my pocket, listening to the game, and the ceremony didn't start till like 4:30, so I was able to get done watching the game before the ceremony started, and we blew them out. And then the following week was our bye week, and so didn't miss a game. So I know a lot of people out there in Chop Nation are gonna think that I'm a little crazy, and you can call me that if you want. There's no judgment there, but nevertheless, yeah, man. So that's about me. I played high school baseball for 2 years, and again played basketball in middle school. And then just been focusing on just the ministry aspect of sports for a lot of years now.
Yeah.
So no, I don't have any connection to the sporting realm with family members in playing sports. I'm kind of one of the lone ones to do so, like in my immediate family. But that's just kind of been my passion, for my whole entire life has been that. So yeah, that's really about me. Go for it.
I have a question for you. Did you have, and this is for the folks that are watching the video, you're not going to pick this up, obviously, just listen to this. Did you have the fireman mustache? Did that make was that part of your decisioning process to go to FSU or become a firefighter?
No.
Did you have the stash, the fireman, before or after that
this
was made?
This is a year and a half mustache.
Okay.
Yeah. So this summer will be 2 years. Yeah.
Got that good thickness to it. Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously, I'm like you, have no hair going on up there.
For everybody that doesn't have.
And the little bit that I did have left, I was already growing the mustache. And with the little bit of hair that I had left, and then finally it took my wife, although I had 50,000 other people, trying to tell me one thing or another about it.
I was one of them.
You were one of them.
I
Had a lot of people telling me, but it took my wife finally, pushing me to cut it off. But no, the stash is about a year and a half old.
Mhm.
Was coming back from vacation, already had a little bit going, and had a couple of buddies that were like, "Hey, man, that seems to be coming in, pretty thick. Like,
Yeah,
let it just go and see what happens to it." And I
yeah.
was like, "All right." So I just kind of shaved around it for work, just let it go. And I tried real early in my career to grow a mustache in my early 20s, and that did not work out well whatsoever. So it took more into my 30s for it to develop.
Right.
And then as the stash came in, the hair went gone, and here it is.
Well, I
So
got to tell you, whatever fertilizer you're using, keep using it. It is 100% working, my friend.
sweet. Well, I appreciate that. That's good to know. I've had some good compliments on it.
Oh yeah, for sure.
We just got back from a cruise for spring break, and somebody
Yeah.
was like, "Man, I must ask you a question." Just making
Of
comments
course.
about it.
Sure.
So no, I'm glad that it's coming in thick. I appreciate that. But man, let's keep things rolling. This is a little bit about us and why our background as to why we're really enjoying doing what we're doing and why we're getting started. Obviously, we're very big into our faith, which is why we started a lot of the things that we started with, sports ministries and church, going to church together, and why we are doing this. We're essentially just combining our love for sports with our love for Jesus. So we're going to be mixing a lot of that in between as time progresses throughout the episodes. So let's start off with some current Seminole and Chief news. I did not. I missed a little bit. I did read a couple of things on what was going on in Chiefs Kingdom, but let's go for it, man. Share me what's going on.
Let me show this to the viewers here to Chop Nation. Let's flip a billfold.
The Super Bowl.
So Chiefs. So let's see who goes first on news. Chiefs is me.
Go for it.
And then the blank side is FSU. Ready?
Go for
it.
Here
we go.
Tell me what's up.
It's you first. Blank. FSU news first. Here we go.
No, go for it. Go for it. I want to hear what's going on. I know that there was a couple things that I had read and saw on SportsCenter and stuff, so I want to know what's going on.
There are, and I want to say that this is not for the people. I'm not Adam Schefter. I'm not going to give you any insight that you don't already have.
Wait, you're not Adam Schefter?
News, huh?
I said, wait, you're not Adam Schefter?
I am not. If you're watching the news and you're keeping up on this and you're a sportsaholic, especially Chiefs Kingdom, you already know this information. This is more for the people who are busy. They're probably sitting in their car. Maybe they want to check out JB's stash a little bit more.
That's right. That's right.
Look at it.
That's right. You got to listen in and find out what's going on.
Let's talk about those that we've lost for the Chiefs. To just go briefly, we lost Mike Edwards. He signed a 1-year agreement with the Bills. We lost Willie Gay, one of our linebackers. He signed with the Saints. We lost Nick Allegretti. He went with the Commanders. I'm not going to go into all the details of the contracts and how much it is. You can read that on ESPN and somewhere else. That's not what we're doing. We lost Tommy Townsend to the Texans. That's a big loss. But we signed somebody else in his place, so I'll go through that in a second. We lost Jody Fortson, but we got somebody else in his place, tight end Jody Fortson. He went over to the Dolphins. There was some restructuring news. I don't know if you read this, but Mahomes has been very generous in restructuring his contracts to make sure that we have cap space. He actually restructured and gave us almost $22 million.
Wow.
In salary cap relief, which is very nice. So those are the kind of the moves that we lost. Obviously, we kept Chris Jones. That was probably the biggest news for Chiefs Kingdom. We signed him to a 5-year contract. A ridiculous amount of money, truckloads worth of money for this guy. But you know what? He deserves it. I don't care.
He does deserve it. He does deserve it.
Super Bowls, and he was critical in the moments when we needed him. He showed up. He's had his critics, but I am not one of them. And Chris, if you're listening to this, we appreciate everything that you're doing. And keep it up. I need you to get your 5 more years with the Chiefs. We need you to get 5 more rings. All right, buddy. Ooh. 5 more rings.
He's not a spring chicken, right? He's not overly young.
But he's still one of the best in the business. He's still getting
it done. I will agree with that.
Some highlights, obviously, I don't know if you saw this, but we signed Marquise Hollywood Brown to a 1-year, $7 million deal, which is kind of a big deal.
Andy Reid had a big part of that.
What's that?
Andy Reid had a big part of that. He sent him out a little teaser, either text or tweet or something. He sent out a little something to him, telling him to come on board.
Yep.
Yeah,
And
I
Drew
did see
Tranquil has
that.
been a part of that as well. We re-signed Derek Nottie, which was a bit, obviously we need to keep Nottie. Tershawn Wharton. Yeah, that's right. There's the connection. There's the
That's right.
chop crossover right there.
That's right.
Tershawn Wharton, we signed him to a 1-year deal. Mike Pinnell, Deion Bush, Irv Smith is a new tight end coming in from the Bengals, which I'm interested to see how he goes.
Mhm.
Obviously, Nazim Johnson, Cole Christensen, Mike Caliendo, Mike Herring, James Winchester, his 10th year with us as our long snapper. He's
Oh
back
wow.
again. Obviously, the $95 million deal with Chris Jones, Drew Tranquil, which we originally picked up from the Chargers. He re-signed for a 3-year deal worth $19 million, which I'm very thankful for because he's been very beneficial to our team. And then we signed punter Matt Ariza to a 1-year deal, a little
Where
under
was
$1
he at
million.
before?
He really wasn't. I think he was with the
I
Bills.
recognize that name.
He had a bit of issues, I think, legally, and then I think those got cleared up, if I remember correctly. And
Okay.
now, I don't know if you've uh, given Chop Talk or Chop Nation the email address, but you may want to. What is that again? The email address? People
Yeah.
can write it
So,
down.
we'll get at that at the very end as well with
Yeah,
our YouTube and stuff. But yeah, so it's Chop Talk 1323
yeah,
at gmail.com.
right.
So
So if you
again,
know some
we'll
information
plug
on
it
a
in at the
meeting,
very end again, but please make sure that you email us that or any of your recommendations for topics that we want to talk about, or anything that you want to say or do
yeah,
that you want us to talk about. That would be great.
yeah.
If we're missing something, again, we're not the Adam Schefter. So if you have a topic you want to talk about or a comment to make about something that we're talking about, please email
Or a
us. That'd be
correction.
great.
We're not perfect.
Nope.
JB's about as close to perfect as you can get. I'm nowhere near perfect. And I'd say probably the last one that we want to talk about is L'Jarius Sneed. He was our quarterback that we lost over to the Titans. That was
Yeah.
pretty big news recently. He has to pass a physical, which he will. But honestly, it was a good move because it gave us a third round in the
Okay.
2025 draft, and we also picked up a 7th round in this year's draft. And I read that, we're just picking up all sort of draft capital. There's a chance that we may have 10 draft picks in 2025 as a team, which
Wow.
is a significant amount of draft capital. So clearly the front end of the Chiefs organization is doing a very good job. So just want to say,
Yeah, for sure.
keep it up, front office, keep doing what you're doing. We got Naughty back. So that's kind of in a nutshell what's been going on since the Super Bowl win. What's 6 weeks ago or so, 7 weeks. So
Right on.
I'll let you take it from there. That's kind of the update with Chiefs Kingdom.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, obviously they're really excited. The Chiefs are to try to come back and three-peat and keep a lot of their guys. I mean, but everybody follows, a lot of people follow the money. So, more so than that. I know, being a big Bucks fan, Shaq Barrett, even after winning the Super Bowl, we signed all 22 starters back the following year. And so for a while I was like, just go ahead and hand us the trophy, if we're going to get all of our starters back.
Yeah.
But he was one of the bigger obstacles, was because he was just more so about the money, more so than whatever. Even Mike Evans, we signed him to another contract, to finish out his career here with the Bucks, as it should be. And he has already restructured again in order to create, more cap space for the Bucks, which is what he's always done.
Right.
So yeah, it's cannot complain, cannot say enough about guys like that. And Mahomes, well, Mahomes is making a lot more money than Mike Evans, but nevertheless,
just a little bit.
But yeah, so no news. Obviously, we are here in the spring. Spring practice just started, I think, a week ago today.
Yeah.
And is showing great strides. I know I'm gonna butcher his name, but DJ Uwangale at the helm coming this season. Yeah, however you pronounce his last name. But so he was a great pickup, between him and Cam Ward. Cam Ward now went with Miami after originally saying he was going to go to the pros, but we tried to get him, but that's okay. DJ is a good quarterback. He gets a lot of because he's done a lot with the teams that he's been on, and last coming from Oregon State. and really putting them, on the map and doing well. So I really think he's going to do really well. Latest practice update was that he did a lot in the difficult situations, but then showed some issues with like the easy passes and stuff. So it's just one of those where you're just kind of, getting to know the books. They just got into pads for the first time, I think, this weekend, helmets and pads, which I think surprised a lot of people. But last week when they first started, you started to see things go a little bit slower practice wise, because, it's first practice. So, you still want the same intensity. So one of the reports said that Coach Mike Norvell was still getting on, like, even his linemen. They're at this point where it's not a lot of contact, but they're like, pushing air, and doing their stances, even their linemen. And it's like, and he's right there in their face, even if, they're sitting there trying to show, if they're not showing 100% effort, even in pushing the air with nobody there, then it's like, then he's right on them. So it's been awesome to just kind of see how we have, after losing so many people, we had a lot of guys that could have gone to the pros 2 seasons ago, or at the end of 2 seasons ago, but decided to stay to come back and play for a national championship. And so we lost a lot of guys, obviously, in the Trey Bensons and Keon Coleman's and Johnny Wilson, and all these guys, that went to the pros and did a great job in the combine recently. So I'm really excited to see about where those Knowles go in the pros. But yeah, so looking very, very promising coming into this season, with him there, have a great running back room, picking up a lot of guys. Marvin Jones Jr. from Georgia was a great pickup, and he's doing great coming in and really put the practice said that report came and said that he put a lot of pressure on DJ, in the backfield. And, he's got a lot of new targets. He's going to see a lot of new targets. DJ does. Patrick Payton was the other side of our defensive line last season. Same NIL deals, which NIL we could talk about it another day. He needed to get paid, and so he got paid. And so now he's back here with us on the other side of Marvin Jones. So great defensive line front. A lot of our defensive guys, signing back up, to come and play. And I say signing back up, because they obviously wanted to see the money. So that's what I call it. But yes, so very exciting. Don't get into a lot of the recruiting stuff, because like I was telling Jeremiah, ahead of time, it is the NIL is just kind of a crazy thing. And so is like until National Signing Day, where people actually sign a letter of intent. I don't buy into who's necessarily going to stay and who's not. We had
anymore.
Yeah, we had a guy, I forget what his name was, that decided to go with Georgia at the last minute, but he was one of our biggest recruits forever. This name was Sam Howell. Sam Howell's been in the pros, but Sam Howell was a big Florida State pickup for a long time. And then boom, near the very, very end, decided to switch and go to North Carolina. So, I don't really buy into a lot of that stuff that goes on, but just sitting here looking at, obviously, you got the Jared Verses and the Fabian Lovitz and a lot of these guys that were part of our Kalen Deloach, a lot of these guys that were part of our team last year. Some are coming back, some are not. They're going to the pros. But so really excited to see what Florida State does this season with a lot of their new parts and pieces. But the early report from spring practice is that if what they're seeing is legit so far in early spring practice, then the teams that are their rivals that thought that they were just going to run over Florida State this coming season might want to rethink a few things. So
I love that.
That's always exciting to hear. One of the topics as we're talking about Florida State that I wanted to touch on, that I've been wanting to get off my chest for so long, so certainly glad, and I'm not going to try to take too long with it though, because I could talk for the whole entire hour with it, is Florida State's beef with Kirk Herbstreit. Now, if you don't know who Kirk Herbstreit is, he is a longtime sports analyst, more so in the college football world, and has been a host of College Game Day NFL, or the college football primetime show, one of my favorite shows on television. Cannot wait until it starts. And just hearing that theme song, although the theme song changed this last season and is not good at all, but nevertheless, you just hear it, you see it, the college football is back when that comes on the TV,
Right.
and it's just kind of a change in the air, and you're just kind of like, it's back.
Ball's coming,
And
baby. Ball's coming.
yeah, and the football is coming at that particular point. Now, still to this day, now we're in March, and December 3rd is when I'll always remember that day. Sunday, December 3rd of 2023 is when the college football playoff first announced the four teams in the playoff, or who the four teams in the playoff were going to be. And obviously, Florida State got snubbed really, really bad. And Kirk Herbstreit took a lot of heat for that, because for many, many games leading up to this decision, even prior to quarterback Jordan Travis getting injured, he was always pushing Florida State to the side. And he's kind of like, in a lot of conversations that he's had after the fact, he has talked about how he, grew up being a Florida State guy, and Dion and this and Bobby Bowden and the culture and this, that, and the other. I get that, that you're paid to just share your opinions. But the truth of the matter is that, I don't think that it's a conspiracy that somebody at his level, that those that are on the playoff committee that aren't, they're sitting there, and those that are members of the playoff committee are not all ones that have played sports before, right? They're just the higher ups in the for those colleges, but it's not as if they spend a lot of time in the sports world, heading up to this, to where they're at right now. And I know that they watch a lot of football games and so on, but the truth of the matter is that the nonsense that they share tied really in, to our fan base, with Kirk Herbstreit and all the things that he shared for many, many weeks leading up to this decision. And so he's getting a lot of beef, and some of which is just it's very colorful, and it doesn't need to be. So if he ever does get an opportunity to listen to something like this, I will say, first of all, as a strong member of the Florida State fan base, there is a lot that has been spoken about him that is just unnecessary. People picking on him and his dogs and so on. I mean, he could have a mental thing going on where he needs, that stuff with his dogs, and that's not something to play around with. And so to his recent, he came out with a recent apology that I'll read in just a minute, to the Florida State fan base. And it was in reference to this gentleman picking on his dogs. And it's like, do you have any real friends, or do you just have dogs? And it's like, okay, that's really unnecessary. That has nothing to do with football. It has nothing to do with his opinions on it. So just stay away from the personal life and stick to football. But Kirk, if you ever do listen, the truth of the matter is that you have to expect the heat that is coming your way. He has not been an advocate for Florida State for weeks. Like, even when we were sitting there undefeated at number 4, all he could do was sit there and talk about the Texas and Alabamas and the Georgias and all that kind of stuff jumping over Florida State. And because it wasn't as if we were blowing out every single team that we were playing. We had issues just like everybody else. And that was one of the things that he continued to bring up, as well as other people, was like, oh, Florida State doesn't look, like the undefeated team. Yes, but they're barely squeaking out wins. Okay, that's true. But nevertheless, look at the scoreboard. We're still winning. We're still undefeated, and we're still beating these teams that are rivals, fighting through injuries and everything. So at the end of the day, it is what it is, and you have to take a look at what's going on. Right. So there are a lot of firsts for the playoff committee that they screwed up on majorly this past go around. And it was first undefeated Power 5 team, obviously, to not be in the playoff in its 10 years of existence. So in over a decade, they've never taken a Power 5, undefeated Power 5 conference champion and not put them in the top 4. So this was the first time that they had ever done anything like that. I think it was also one of the first times that someone, I think at 6 or below, ranked 6 or below, was then put into the playoff. And so there was a 3 or 4, really pivotal firsts that it was like, well, you've set a crazy precedence from this point forward. And, so to the Boo Kerrigans who came out and said, well, they're just a completely different team without Jordan Travis and not understanding the defense wins championships and so on. You got to go back and look at NFL teams, college teams, everything, to those that won based on a defensive stand,
Mhm.
based on their defense when they struggle with injuries, whether it was to the quarterback or whatever. So at the end of the day, yeah, we still played with a second and third string quarterback, and we still won the ACC championship. We still beat Florida. I mean, it was we still beat the game. You know, whoever, I forget who it was, Northern Alabama, or whoever it was that Jordan Travis went down, and you know, with a backup, we still came in and killed them as well. So
Mhm.
we went over all the odds and overcame a lot of odds as a team, even with those particular injuries. And you'll see that my co-host Jeremiah, he is struggling with some technical difficulties, so he's out at this particular moment. That's why you see him exiting. But I'm going to keep talking about Florida State stuff. So, you know, Kirk Herbstreit, you know, he's got to expect this kind of heat. You know, we had a lot of members that came back for that reason, was to play for national championship, and we did everything that was expected there on the field, as it should be, to do it. And yet they were held out because of politics and of money. And you can follow the money between the SEC and ESPN and the college football and ESPN, and you could follow the money between all of it. And and so you can follow all that. And Kirk, you have just been, he's been an advocate of it all, you know, of following that SEC bias, and he would be one that would get upset, you know, when Florida State fans or anybody else, ACC fans or whatever, would talk about his SEC bias or whatever. I know that he's a big Ohio State guy, played for Ohio State, and I get it and I understand. But at the end of the day, he was a very, very big advocate against Florida State being in the playoffs. Period. Hands down. Was a very, very big advocate with Florida State not being in the playoff even before Jordan Travis got injured. And so he has to take a lot of heat, because at the end of the day, even when Jordan Travis was in, all this stuff that they're talking about right now, he was still not putting Florida State in the playoff to begin with. So to sit there and say, oh, well, it's just because they're a different team without Jordan Travis, dude, there's proof. There's video evidence that shows that he has been against us, against Florida State, you know, for multiple games prior to Travis even getting hurt. And so, you know, and it still stinks. You know, we're 3 or 4 months later. We all watched, you know, the college football playoffs of those teams that were there. And we know 100%. I mean, you've got Michigan guys at the combine, at the NFL combine. You have Michigan guys that were there on their national championship team that said that they were so happy to play Alabama and not Florida State, because there was no way that they were going to be able to block our defensive line. And, you know, that speaks volumes to say that, you know what, they understand defense. They understand that defense can win championships. Defense is what won us the ACC championship. Defense is what helped us beat Florida in a pivotal game at the very end of the season with as many injuries as we had. And so I just had to address that. I wanted to read his. I mean, I pretty much said what his apology was. His apology essentially just covered the fact that, you know, that he's sorry that we're such, you know, that we're such upset about this or whatever, and that he, you know, that he's been a supporter of Florida State and this, that, and the other, and he can say what he wants to say. But at the end of the day, during the regular season and coming up to the end of the regular season, he was not a fan of Florida State. He could say what he wants to say, but he wasn't a fan of them being in the playoffs. They were the most deserving out of all those teams that were in there. They were the most deserving. You watched those 4 teams play. Alabama getting to be in on a Hail Mary, like literally by a Hail Mary in the SEC championship game against an Auburn team, or excuse me, in the Iron Bowl, a Hail Mary against an Auburn team in the corner of the end zone at the end of the game to win the game. That guy drops it, and we're not even discussing Alabama being in the playoff. We're not even talking about it and discussing it. But yet, just because they end up winning that game by a Hail Mary, it's like all bow down to Alabama. And it was complete nonsense. And, you know, I'm not going to go down into, you know, rabbit trails and things of that nature. Looks like Jeremiah's back here, so I'm going to put him back in here. You know, so again, I'm not going to go down rabbit trails. Jeremiah, you missed me just kind of finishing up on the Kirk Herbstreit stuff and the Alabama run. You know, talking about how they're a Hail Mary drop in the Iron Bowl away from us not even having a discussion of whether or not they're even in or not. And the fact that they managed to pull out that game against an Auburn team, I don't even know if they were even ranked at the time. Was just crazy. It was just crazy to me. But anyways, so just wanted to address that. Needed to get that off my chest, man. Kirk, dude, you can sit there and apologize all you want, but at the end of the day, you can't say that you're a big advocate because you weren't. Near the end of the regular season, you were already putting Texas and Alabama wherever they were at. Texas and Alabama floating around that 8-9 spot. You were already talking about moving them up into the playoff if they won the SEC championship game and so on, if they actually played in it. So, to sit there and say, oh, that you've been a big fan and this, that, and the other. Okay, well, we're just not buying it, because you haven't shown it. So anyways, that's my soapbox of the Kirk Herbstreit. And again, I only bring this up because he just came out with another apology yesterday. And was like, all right, I got to address this because this is just crazy that we're still kind of talking about this. But nevertheless, so, well, let's move on here. We're looking at time, so let's move on here. We have a lot to talk about with college and NBA basketball. We're right in the middle of March Madness, and that is exactly what it has been since day one. I remember that I believe I read something while we were out of town, and even getting into day two or by the end of day two or something of that nature, or after the first day, there was 70 or after, yeah. So after BYU's loss, so BYU in the first round, after they lost to Duquesne. Yeah. Is that how you pronounce it? Duquesne?
Yeah, it was Duquesne. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Duquesne. So yes, I'm looking at it here. So after BYU's loss against Duquesne, there was 77% of, I don't know if it was ESPN brackets or all brackets, but I think it was from Sports Center. I think it was more or less ESPN. But 77% of the brackets for, I think, ESPN or total had chosen BYU to win that game. And so there was only after that game, there was only 15 point something percent perfect brackets left just after that game alone. So it's been absolute madness, going on. So go ahead and share with me what your bracket looks like. Everyone's got to hear what your bracket looks like.
Lord, here we go.
It's a little crazy. So go for it.
I'm gonna add on a little bit to what you just said in terms of the bracket busting. It's been a crazy March for sure. The March Madness is real. I actually chose Oregon, James Madison, and Grand Canyon to win in the first round, and they all did.
Yeah.
And after that happened, there was only 308 perfect brackets in the entire United States, according to ESPN. 22.1 million brackets had been busted at that point.
Yeah.
So I think at this point it's pretty much busted. But in terms of my picks, my dad and I talk sports all the time. He's a big sports guru, sports nut.
Sure.
I asked him if he would come on the show at some point. He said, nah, absolutely not. It's not his thing. But we do text and talk quite a bit about the Chiefs, obviously, and just in general. And I sent him I always send it, so I sent it ahead of time. I've chosen 12 or 13 of the Sweet 16 picks. So I got UConn, Illinois, Iowa State, correct, North Carolina, Alabama, Arizona, Houston, Duke, Marquette, Purdue, Creighton, and Tennessee, all correct. I had Kansas, Kentucky, and Auburn going forward. And that was,
those are big ones.
Kentucky got beat early, which kind of shocked me a little bit. I felt bad. We're going to have Coach Bynum on the show at some point, and he's a big Kentucky fan. And I texted him. I said, Coach Bynum, sorry about your Kentucky Wildcats. He's like, we were at a play or something, my wife and I didn't see it. Did we lose? I'm like, oh no.
Oh no, you had to be the one to break it to him.
Assume he's such a big fan of Kentucky. I literally ruined it for him, JB. I ruined it. I kind of felt bad for a little bit, then I got over it. So
not to interrupt, but I saw a funny video, little meme about Kentucky's run, and it said Kentucky's short run in the tournament, and it was Aaron Rodgers running out of the tunnel.
I saw that too.
Did you see that one?
And that's it.
I was like, well, there was a perfect video to represent that. That one was it.
Yeah, the flag in his I saw
that. Yeah. That was a pretty funny one.
And being from Kansas, KU had a decent team, but we knew they weren't going to run, Elite Eight, Final Four, honestly. Yeah. So, we won it a couple years ago. Everybody's got to get a shot.
But they're all pretty. But Kansas is always up there. I mean, because they came in preseason number 1.
Yeah, I mean, it was going to be a tough push. You know, it
Yeah.
was a tough run all
And
the way
this is like
through.
the 6th or 7th year in a row that preseason number 1 got bumped out fairly early. I saw the list
Mhm.
of it between Villanova, Kansas, and UNC, all getting bumped out, fairly early.
Mm-hmm. So we're recording this before March Sweet 16 starts on Thursday. This is
Yep.
a couple days prior. So I'm going to go ahead and read through who I got, and you know who this is, and people are
Go
going
for
to be
it.
like, "This
Let's
man
see
is
it.
crazy." All right, so we've got in the Elite Eight, I've got Houston, Purdue, Creighton, UConn, Iowa State, North Carolina, and Arizona. The other one is bumped already. And then I've got my Final Four open: Iowa State, North Carolina. So Iowa State coming, Iowa State, North Carolina, Houston, and Creighton. And then for my championship, now keep in mind this is like one of 60 brackets that I play. And then I've got in the championship game Iowa State number 2 versus number 3 Creighton, small Jesuit school out of Nebraska, going to the championship game. And in this specific bracket, I've got Creighton, the Creighton Blue Jays, winning the whole thing.
Winning the whole thing.
Not
I like
UConn,
it.
not Houston, not Purdue, not North
I
Carolina.
like
The
it.
number ones are gone. Got a 2 versus 3, a Goliath versus or David versus David, I suppose. And the reason why is they shoot 20, 30, 40 3-points a game. Creighton does. And they have 3 or 4 shooters that are just lights out. And if they're on, and they live and die by the 3, if they're on, there's no team in the country that can beat them. They
Yeah.
just have too many shooters. And they
Sure.
don't shoot like right behind the line. They shoot 5, 10 feet behind the line and will still make it almost every single time. Now, I know they went to double overtime. I watched that game. That was pretty crazy, but they made it. They won in double overtime the other night. So they're still in it. And then
Sure.
Iowa State, kind of for the same reason. Their defense is outstanding. You can't just look at who your favorite team is. I look at it objectively. I go through in the analytics. I look at what they've done in the past
Yeah,
versus,
for sure.
other ranked teams.
Out of all the different ways that people
Quad 1,
choose
2, 3,
teams.
4. You got to look at all, and you got to look at who's gelling and who's on the way up as sports guys, right? Especially
Who's
in
kind of
coaching.
hot.
You got to look who's hot, who's gelling at the right time, who's got that mentality, who's had a 15, 18 run going into the tournament. So there's a lot of things that I looked at, and I don't know. I just really liked Iowa State and Creighton to go all the way because they may not be the biggest team, right? They don't have, the Kalkbrenner, he's 7'1" for Creighton, but other than that, they don't have a bunch of big guys. They're like 6'1", 6'3", 6'4".
Sure.
They're not huge, but they get the job done when it comes time. So that is it's either Iowa State or Creighton winning the whole thing. I want to hear about this one that you just filled out. I know you're out on a cruise, so you didn't do this. Let's talk a little bit about your bracket you filled out and sent over to me.
Yeah.
Can you please go through this?
So just kind of taking a look at it. Obviously I know that, the odds are not in favor of having 4 number ones. And so just filling this out like the 20 seconds before we got on the air was
Right.
like, okay, just filling this out really fast. And so, there are a couple like number 2s or even a 3 that I could see possibly making it that far. So yeah, I did have 4 number 1s there just because all 4 of those number 1 teams are doing extremely well right now. So, the UConns, just looking at the points that they're putting up, but then you also kind of look at some of the teams that they're playing. Northwestern team that's pretty good, a San Diego State team that's pretty good. So they had a 9 and a 5 that they beat pretty handedly. And it could just be good to their division. But Iowa State the same. So I could see an Iowa State. They beat a number 15 South Dakota State team really bad, but that was kind of be expected. But then they beat a pretty decent, Washington State team. So then you're like, man, that's a tough one as well. So, San Diego State, there was a 5, Washington State was a 7. So both of those teams have been putting up some pretty decent numbers against, top, 10 seeded teams. But I went with experience there. So I went with UConn just having experience, at that level and handling that kind of pressure. Although an Iowa State team, being out there in the Midwest would be pretty cool. I have to agree with you there. In the West bracket, I did have listen, people want to knock Clemson, and being an ACC guy, I'm not trying to choose Clemson. I'm a Florida State guy, but nevertheless, you take a look at what Clemson just did to number 3 Baylor, what they did to New Mexico, and then what they just did to number 3 Baylor. And they were hitting on all cylinders, even heading into, like the ACC tournament.
Right.
And so I'm like, it's about teams that are getting hot, and we'll talk about NC State here in just a minute. But nevertheless, and so Arizona's been doing pretty well as well. They took down a pretty decent Dayton team, but Dayton just barely pulled it out over Nevada in the first round. And so it's not as if they're coming in like overly hot. So I expected Arizona to do well. So I did pick Clemson and not over Arizona because that was kind of like my sleeper, because although Arizona has a lot more experience there, Clemson's just kind of been hitting on all cylinders.
Right.
However, I did choose then, just above that, you have UNC and Alabama. Alabama, just what a game last night between them and Grand Canyon. I thought Grand Canyon was going to pull it out. I mean, but you just saw Alabama's resiliency there at the end of the game. That just and their physicality that just was like, no, we're not losing this game. And so that was pretty cool to see. But I think that was very emotional. I think that was very physical, very emotional for them. And so I see them going into a matchup with UNC, and UNC is just too good. They're just too good. And I know that they didn't. I know they didn't win the ACC tournament, but they're still good. They're still coming in. Baycott is like, he's on a mission, to win this tournament. So I do have them over Clemson there. In the South Division, I do have a Houston team over a Duke team, because Duke is, they're a decent team, but they're not the Duke teams of the old. You know what I mean? Like they didn't even make it to the championship game in the ACC, and so they're not the great Coach K Duke teams right now. I'm sure that they will be, because they still pick up the recruits and good ball players. So I'm sure they will be. I just don't see them being they had to play what was Vermont, a 13 and then a 12, because James Madison beat Wisconsin. So they haven't really had anybody of great value that they've played as of yet. And Houston was, I think they ended the regular season at number 1, I think. And so they're just too good. And so I think that Houston's going to take that. And then Purdue, just goodness gracious, there isn't too many teams that look as good as Purdue does right now. With what's his name, Ivy, their center guy, dude, just tearing it up big time. But we have some friends that are Purdue fans, and so they're just loving life right now over there in that Midwest division. And I do have them beating Tennessee. I think Tennessee's, they put up a great game against Texas. They beat St. Peter's pretty good, which is to be expected. But then going and beating a number 7, Texas team was pretty good. So I do see them doing fairly well as well. But again, that's a 2 versus 3 against Creighton. And so I agree with you. Creighton is kind of like a BYU. Those smaller schools are not, they're not known for like their physicality. They're known for their quickness and their shooting. And run. Agree.
Yeah. And
I completely agree. I think that they could put up a great showing against Tennessee and possibly pull it out. But I don't see them getting past a Purdue team. Purdue's playing Gonzaga. You can't sleep on the Zags.
No.
Gonzaga pulls out one against – what's that?
I would say based on my analysis, I didn't have Gonzaga going all the way. But, they're good.
Yeah, they're a great team. So I just don't see, like, even if Creighton were to pull it out against a Tennessee team, which, I could certainly see, I just don't see them beating a Gonzaga or Purdue. It's just hard for me to pick that. So I do have 4 number 1s, but again, I could certainly see a couple, a number 2 seed like an Iowa State or an Arizona, certainly, ruffling some feathers there, getting into the Final Four. I don't really know.
Blank. Are you going to? You can fill it in live as we're on the show.
Well, because we have some friends that are Purdue fans, I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to say that the championship is going to come out of the either the South or the Midwest division. So it's either going to be a Houston or Purdue. I see beating either the East or the West. I do. So I see a Houston or Purdue, and we're just going to go for it. We're just going to say Purdue. Purdue's going to win it all. You heard my pick here.
Purdue.
That's right. You hear me saying it right here and there. So, but anyways, let's talk really, really fast about NBA playoff run. We're going to go a little bit over that hour, but I kind of expected that in the first episode of us just kind of introducing one another. So just moving from March Madness into the NBA playoff run. For those of you out there, I'm also, if you don't know, I'm a diehard Orlando Magic fan. So very, very excited about what's been going on with them. But looking at the current, this is something people might have questions about, understanding what the play-in tournament is. So the top 8 teams in each conference get into the playoffs, but number 7 through 10 play in what's called a play-in tournament. And so that is essentially to decide who's going to be the 7th seed and who's going to be the 8th seed. And the way that works is that the 9th and 10th place teams play each other, and the 7th and 8th place teams play each other. And then the winner of the 7th and 8th place gets that 7th seed, period. So they get that, or no, I think they automatically get a seed, or maybe they get the 8th seed. I forget what it is, but I think they automatically get like a 7th seed or something like that. And then so the winner of the 9th and 10th will then go and play the winner of the 9th and 10th will get the 8th seed, and the winner of the 7th and 8th place will again get the 7th seed. I don't think they play then each other after that. I think it just goes 7 versus 8.
Yeah.
And then the 7 versus 8 goes and gets the 7th seed. And then I think the way that it works, okay, yeah, so I'm sorry, I stand corrected. So the 7th and 8th place team plays one another, and that winner automatically gets the 7th seed. Then the loser of that 7-8 game goes and plays the winner of the 9th and 10th place to then get the 8th seed. So again, sorry, I stand corrected on that. So currently you have Boston that's already secured a playoff spot at the top of the East, and you have in the West, they've clinched the playoff spot in general, although it doesn't say it as of this particular moment. The Celtics have the best record in the NBA right now by far. So they've clinched their division at this particular moment. But right now in the East, you have Boston, Milwaukee, Cleveland, New York, Orlando, Indiana. Those are locked in, as of this moment, with about 10 or 11 games left in the regular season. Orlando, I'm hoping to switch places with the Knicks. They're only a half game out, but we have the win-loss against the Knicks, so we just but we've played one more game than they have. So hoping to switch places with them and get that home court for the first round. But chances are, with the way that it looks, we'll end up playing them in the first round anyway, so I'd rather have home court against them because they're not a bad team. Nope, and then the play-in tournament, as it stands, you've got Miami, Philly, Chicago, and Atlanta. But you still have 2 teams on the outside of that in Brooklyn and Toronto. They're still not out as of yet and being in that play-in tournament. So these last 10 games are a lot because literally from second place in the East, which is Milwaukee at 46-25, you have the Magic that are like 42-29. So they're literally only like 4 games back. So between 5 and 2, you still have people that are only 3 to 4 games away. And, so the last 10 to 11 games is certainly going to be, and then those 2 teams that are looking to get into the play-in, those are a little bit more far-fetched. Like the Nets are 26-45. They're 4.5 games, 5.5 games back from Atlanta at that 10th spot. So a lot would have to happen there in order to get those in. And they've lost 6 in a row, and the Raptors have lost 10 in a row. So I don't see either one of those teams. I don't see the Hawks just like randomly just losing out of nowhere and not being able to get in there. And then sliding out to the West, you got Denver. They switch places with Oklahoma. Look at Oklahoma City just being like they've been number 1 in the West for a while.
Yeah.
What were you saying?
But they lost to the Bucks. You can't lose to the Bucks and expect to be number 1.
I know. But I mean, having such a young team and being 49-21, and being, first place in the West of all places. I mean, a lot of these teams aren't necessarily the teams that they used to be. Like the Lakers and the Warriors are just trying to play to be in the play-in right now.
Yeah, they're in the play-in. They'd be playing right now. Yeah,
they're 9th and 10th right now, so they're really playing for their life. And probably still will be. But again, they're only a game. The Warriors themselves are only a game in front of the Rockets for that last play-in spot. So Golden State may not even make it. And then at the same time, you have the Lakers will probably make it. They're 3.5 games or so ahead of Houston. So I see that the Lakers will probably make it in. And then you've got the Kings that are a pretty decent team and the Mavericks. So I see those teams making it. So it's going to be an interesting last, 10 or 11 games to see how that plays out. But obviously hoping for the Magic there to switch places there with the Knicks, but not really overly surprising. Teams as of right now, except for Oklahoma City being so high for me. The Clippers, when they have Paul George and Kawhi, playing at the same time, I figured that they would do well. The Suns, you can't ever count them out with KD and Devin Booker there if they can stay healthy and together. The Pelicans the same way, with Zion. If Zion can stay healthy, they'll be in there. Sacramento, just having those guys, Sabonis and some of these other guys, it's not surprising that they're doing well. And then Dallas with Kyrie. I expected Dallas to be a little bit better, coming into a second season with Kyrie and Luka. But I know that they both, I think, have struggled with injuries this season. So I know that's been a little bit difficult.
Yeah.
And then the Lakers, once they get into the playoffs, then, they'll make a little bit of a run. So as much as I don't necessarily, I'm not a big LeBron fan. I mean, you keep him and AD healthy, and you'll see them make a little bit of a run. And
knows how to win. He's been there before.
The Warriors, they're just not going to go anywhere, man. I mean, Kyrie, you just can't put everything on Steph Curry, on his shoulders. And they've been trying to figure out Draymond's situation this season and whether or not to put, Klay Thompson on the bench or not on the bench. And so that's been a struggle bus. So I think this is just going to be an off season for them going forward. But maybe next week we kind of make our final picks after a week and just kind of see what we think is going to go on in the playoffs. So yeah, man. So let's end from there. And, as we said at the very beginning of the show, we want to involve our faith into these conversations. Mm-hmm. And so there's a current event, that happened just recently. You want to take this, or you want me to kind of open it up?
No, go ahead. And I don't know if we have time. We should probably hold this for maybe show number 2.
You want to hold that one for next week?
I think so.
Okay.
We could have some more. I'd like to have some more expanded conversation on this, and we're already over an hour. And I don't want to do that to ChopNation.
That's perfect. That's perfectly fine. So just a little teaser for next week. Again, we'll have a lot more time for these types of conversations. Yeah. This one just kind of went a little bit longer because of us just wanting to share with you about the show and who we were. So we figured it was going to go a little long. But just to kind of give you a little headline, this is coming from the Daily Wire, which is a right-wing type site. Ben Shapiro, big fan of them. Is Chiefs kicker Harrison Butker calls out a cardinal for abomination of transgender funeral. He is a devout Catholic, Harrison Butker is, and just recently at St. Patrick's Cathedral, which is in New York, I think, New York, just allowed for a transgender funeral. And the story mentions a lot of different things in there about things that were shared that really go against like the Catholic religion. And Harrison was very, very outspoken about that. So next week we'll touch on that and be able to spend maybe we'll open with that one and just kind of and share a lot about that and see if we can't bring some other conversations to be had. So, but we are here at the very end of our show, our first episode. I'm so excited. We're like I said, we're just over an hour, but we're into a great groove. Going forward. We just want to thank everybody, that has taken this opportunity to listen to our first episode. And again, they're only going to get better. We wanted to just make sure we introduced ourselves going forward, and it's only going to get better from here. We're going to have guest speakers on the show and be able to touch on a lot of great topics, great conversations. So thank you all for listening to this first episode and just who we are, why we're doing what we're doing, and what our goal is moving forward for this podcast. Again, as we spoke earlier, we kind of teased on the next episode what we're going to look at, with that particular story and a few others. Growing ejections in the NBA. I've got some information to share on that one next episode. I don't know if you have seen or not, but there is, even from like the very beginning of the season, like November, December time, there was a huge growth in ejections throughout the season. You're seeing fights and ejections happening all over the place. So we'll talk about that as well. And then more on the NCAA tournament and the playoffs. So I'm really excited for episode 2. And so we just thank everybody. You can go, please do us a favor as you're listening to this. If you're listening to this either on Facebook or YouTube, please go and subscribe to our channel. You can look us up at ChopTalk1323. That's the same as our email. You can email us at choptalk1323@gmail.com. And again, as we said earlier, send us your comments, concerns, things that we said wrong. We'll certainly adjust them the next episode to make sure that our stats or views are correct. Not necessarily views, but statistics are correct. And or any other topics that you bring up that you might want us to talk about or that you feel need to be addressed. We're going to talk about the culture of the sports world and the professional world and where we feel like it's heading on a spiritual perspective and a biblical perspective, because that's what we're all about, is not opinions. We're just straight as to what, the word of God says. So that's where we're going to go going forward. So you got anything else to close with?
I would say I'm just tune in, because we've got some very interesting guests coming along the way. Some award-winning athletic directors, some state Hall of Fame folks, coaches in the past. We've got some people that you're going to really want to hear from. So I would say tune in. We love you, Chop Nation, and stay prayed up.
Absolutely. You guys have a great rest of your day. God bless you all again. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you all next week. Take care.